And we are live. Welcome everyone to hackingsocial.live. My guest today is Amy Woods. And I got to tell you guys something. The topic for today is unleashing the power of content repurposing. And Amy and I did a show a couple of weeks ago, and I was blown away with what Amy did after the show was over, how she recreated and repurposed content on all the different platforms. Amy, to shine a light on our show, which was very wonderful and thoughtful of you, but also as a guy that enjoys good marketing and good branding, I'm like, this, I've never seen anybody do it as well as Amy Woods. And so that's why I've asked Amy to be on the show today. She was referred to me by marketing pro Jay Bear. So when Jay makes a referral, you know it's going to be a good one. So Amy, all the way out of Manchester, England, I believe. How are you doing today? Everything good?
Yes, I'm doing great. The sun is shining here in Manchester, and thank you so much for having me on. It's just great to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure. And you and I both know the power of social, the power of digital, oftentimes is in the repurposing aspect of the platforms and of the content on those platforms. And I think that's where a lot of people drop the ball. And that's why I wanted Amy to be on the show, you guys, today. Share this out, ask your questions, and we'll make all the above happen. Amy and her company, Content X, are out of Manchester, England. They help entrepreneurs, business owners, and brands to leverage and repurpose their content in order to maximize reach, generate leads, increase revenue, and grow their business. And once again, you guys, I've never seen anyone do this as well as Amy and her team. So that's pretty cool. Amy, why don't we start off with, what is content repurposing and what is effective content repurposing?
Yeah, so I think, people have different definitions of content repurposing. And to me, the content repurposing is about getting the most value out of the content that you create. And it's about finding different ways to share that message. So remembering that all forms of content are a form of communication. And when we choose to create a certain piece of content, we are communicating that message in that particular way. So we are creating a podcast episode where we're choosing to create content in that spoken way for people to listen. But then repurposing is about, okay, how do I share that message now to reach a different audience or to connect with people differently and to change the format? So sometimes when I talk to people about repurposing, they think that I mean just simply republishing, so kind of reposting the same thing. So we have features like on Instagram, you can post to Twitter automatically the same thing, or podcast episodes can automatically go to YouTube. But I see it as being a lot more, I suppose, creative and strategic with how you repurpose and thinking about different platforms. So people go to different platforms for different reasons, in different frame of mind, to consume content in different ways. So you need to think about how you can share a message that you shared in one platform in a different way on different platforms. And it's also about in connecting with people differently. So some people love to listen, but some people love to watch video, and some people just love to read, and some people, just love bite-sized content and can't take in long form. So when you repurpose, you're really trying to make your content go further. And the beauty of it is that you are sticking to the same message. You put all that effort into that first piece of content. You're becoming known for that message again and again, and just showing people that you want to meet where they are and communicate in the ways that they want to be communicated with. So kind of a long answer, but I've made it my life's work now to be a content repurposer. So I'm quite passionate about that answer.
Good. You should be, because I am so impressed by what I've watched you do. And I know later on in the show, we're going to go over, if you do a live video like this live video, an interview, Amy's going to share some ways to repurpose the content of this live video in many different ways that she would recommend that will work for you. But Amy, let's take a step back. We put in a lot of time pre-promoting or creating our content or pre-promoting our show. We take time doing an interview or maybe having a live video show doing Q&A. And now we're going to be taking time to create and repurpose the content.
Mm-hmm.
From a percentage standpoint, for example, with most of my shows, I'll spend 20% getting ready because it's usually on a topic I'm already familiar with. I'll spend most of my time on the show interviewing a wonderful guest like you, making sure everything's working. And in the past, I would spend maybe 5 or 10% mentioning the show after we were done, repurposing the show. Now, that was up until 4 or 5 years ago, until I realized the importance of repurposing content over and over. What is your ratio when it comes to repurposing content? Are you spending as much time repurposing that content as you are creating it in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, you would probably be surprised that I guess I would say that you should spend more time on the repurposing than the original piece. I mean, obviously, completely depending on people's time and capacity. But you see, the funny thing is, so take for example, so let's say you have a podcast and you really want people to listen to the podcast and you want to grow your audience, you want as many people to find out about it as possible, and also just hear the message in whichever way suits them. What often happens is when I talk about repurposing, people will say you don't have much time to repurpose. But usually what they'll say is, because by the time I finish one episode, I'm immediately working on the next one. You know, where would I fit the time in between one to the other? Because I'm constantly churning out the new content. But I guess my challenge is to make sure that you see it all as content. You know, it's not the main content is, you know, the best, the pillar content, you know, that's on the pedestal. And then the repurposed content is just the, you know, the seconds of the main event, because the content that you create from repurposing an original piece can be just as good. Sometimes it can go on and have a bigger impact in its repurposed format. So there might have been a live stream that didn't take off that well, but the blog post about the live stream, that went, you know, that took off, or whatever, you know, like it doesn't, every piece of content can stand its own ground as having potential to reach and impact people in different ways. So it's about seeing it all as content as opposed to the first, the second. But the beauty is that when you have that first piece to refer to and you've put that time and that effort, and so for live streams, they're prepping and they're getting ready and they're going live, you put the time and effort in, it's not that additional thinking process, because the thinking has been done for the content. It's now kind of strategically breaking the message up into different formats and locations. So, you know, really effectively going to town with repurposing, I'd say kind of 20-30% the original piece, and then like 70-80% the repurposing, but at least 50-50 if you really want to get that message in as many people as possible, to reach as many people as you can. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked you that question. And before I continue, Nancy says, hi, friends. Amy is a content rock star. We're going to second that, Nancy. And Nancy, so are you. So it's good to have you stop by the show. For those of you just tuning in, and I've already got a few questions, Amy, over on the right, please share this out. Please ask your questions. We're going to take our time and get through every single talking point that we can when it comes to repurposing content. But I like the fact that you pointed out there's nothing wrong with putting a lot of work and energy into repurposing your content. And in fact, it's new content. When you took our interview, the interview I did with you, the next thing I see are little audio clips, are new logos and banners, are different quotes. You made me look really smart by taking some things that I said and you broke it down into A, B, and C, where you took the initiative to do that, which means the world to me, right? I think somebody that's being interviewed you always want to look good, right? So anything that you can do to shine a light on your guests and share them over and over and over again down the right path, the right way. I think everybody appreciates that. And then the community benefits from the content when it's all said and done, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, Mitch, though, it wasn't hard to find the content to make you look good, because the episode was fantastic and there was so many golden gems in there. And I said to my copywriter, when he draws up the plan and he works out what the best quotes are and what the best sound bites were and things like that, I said to him, on this one with Mitch, you are actually going to be so spoiled for choice. You're going to just you're not going to know which sound bites to use and which, because it was gold. So you made making you look good easy, Mitch.
Well, thank you, Amy. I'm going to share that clip with my family, okay? Because they don't think I'm smart enough to figure out how to take the trash out on a Monday morning. I've got if you don't mind, there's a question over here from John.
Brilliant.
And when you and I talk about repurposing, I know what we're talking about. You know what we're talking about. Maybe just, when we do a video, when you say repurposing, you're not saying just take little video clips from that video. You're talking about creating new content from that original video that can be used on different platforms. Maybe dive a little bit deeper into what you mean by repurposing so that everybody's on the same page, if you don't mind.
So I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. So of a repurposing, I guess, story that people I think would be quite surprised with. So it's something that we mentioned our mutual friend Jay Bear, and so to explain some repurposing that he did. Okay, so firstly, when he brought out his book Talk Triggers, a fantastic book that Jay wrote, he did loads and loads and loads and loads of research and had loads and loads and loads of case studies that went into that book. Okay, so all of the research became a book, but he also turned that research into a keynote talk. So we're starting to go a bit down the repurposing route here, because there was a load of research that became a book, but also became a keynote delivered on stages, all over the world. And then all the case studies in the book became individual videos, so short videos. The Talk Triggers YouTube series was launched. Okay, so we're repurposing case studies from research into a weekly show on YouTube, and every week it was a short kind of 7 or 8 minute episode that dug into a case study shared in the book. Then every one of those videos became a podcast episode. So it wasn't just the weekly Talk Triggers YouTube show, it was the Talk Triggers podcast as well. And that came from extracting audio from video and producing that into a podcast. So we have both of those. The video is going on YouTube, the podcast is going onto the podcasting apps. And again, that's for some people love to listen, some people love to watch. So choose your way of taking in this awesome content. But didn't stop there. So then they became blog posts. So that case study and everything said in that, all the great comments became, long form written blog posts. So maybe you don't want to read, maybe you don't want to watch, maybe you don't want to watch or listen, but you want to read. Okay. So they became blog posts. So this is repurposing video into podcast episode, into blog post, and then social media content. So from the video, there's conversation starters in Twitter. Let's create lots of different tweets asking people about things brought up in the video, points made, questions to ask. Let's take, as you mentioned, Mitch, let's also create shorter videos. So let's take this long video and create 15-second ones to share in Instagram stories and 1 minute ones to share on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. So slicing and dicing up the video and creating like quotes and graphics and things like that. And I know I'm talking about a lot of different skill sets, I guess, here in talking about this, but
it's okay.
It's going across all these different. So, you could start at the top with video to podcast, to blog post, to tweets, to Insta content, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And maybe you were talking about the top 10 ways to do a live stream, and you could turn that into a checklist as well, and have a content upgrade right there to grow your email subscribers by having an accompanying checklist or an infographic that you can get onto places like Pinterest and places like that. So then we're going down the visual route as well. So it's really thinking about the different formats, not just taking one thing and slicing it into what it is, which is a great thing to do, blog post into tweets, videos into shorter videos, but it is about, other long form as well as other bite size, snackable content as well.
And Amy, when we talk about all the different format styles, I think if my understanding is correct, you're creating this content with the understanding of different learning styles. Your community learns and digests content in different ways. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so actually, I could jump to some slides that I have on the different learning styles if you want. I have
I say
some.
go for it. Roll the dice.
So let me do my click on the little screen share. Here we go. There. So we can see these slides now, can't we?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So there's 7 different learning styles, and when we are creating content, we're always thinking about this. We're thinking about the different learning styles and how we can try and connect with people, because we all learn differently and we all connect with content in different ways. And it's definitely not to say that if you only create a certain type of content, you're only going to connect with people who prefer that. So, if you only ever create podcasts, I'm not saying you would only ever connect with people who prefer to listen, but you'll establish a deeper connection with people if you can just go that bit further to the content that's more their preference. So the 7 learning styles I talk about, there's the visual learning style. So people who love to learn from pictures, images, charts, photos. So, definitely people who probably love the quote images and the content that you would see in places like Instagram. Then you have the oral learners. Always that's out, isn't it?
Basset Hound.
Yay!
That's what we have in our family, Amy, or we did
really?
until last year. Yeah.
Oh, they're so nice, aren't they?
Yeah.
So here, people who prefer to listen, and these kinds of individuals are way more likely to just be ecstatic when you launch that podcast, or when you bring out the book and then you say, hey, there's an audiobook version, people who love to listen. Then we have the physical learners. Now, I know this is a little bit hard when we're talking about the online world, because this is, we're usually talking about providing people with something that they can get hold of. Like we've got the abacus there for learning counting, but there are ways that, you can create more of that physical type learning by providing things like downloads and printables and things that people feel they can get something tangible from the message that you're presenting. Then we have, verbal learners. So people who enjoy like discussion, and like we are doing right now in terms of coming together on a live stream and having that opportunity for discussion and more. They prefer that verbal type of learning experience. And then we have logical learners. So people who, they want to see the data behind this. They want to see, not necessarily, digging deep into data, but they would love like a more structured approach. So things like checklists and infographics, structured blog posts, that kind of thing, to really help them understand the message that you're putting across. And then social interpersonal, so people who actually like to learn in groups. So obviously when events are back, these are kind of people who are just going to flock to events and enjoy soaking up that learning in a social and interpersonal way. But of course we can create that experience online with forums and group Skype and Zoom calls and virtual events in that manner. And then we have the 7th, so the solitary learners, so people who like to just learn alone and are maybe more likely to sign up for that online course. They're more likely to prefer like a self-learning option, things not as much in their face but more consuming that, reading that blog post in their own time, signing up to something that they can do. And this isn't to say people who just go off and want to be in solitude, but it's that those kinds of learners as opposed to social interpersonal and the different ways we learn. So I guess the point of bringing this up and sharing this is because I just think it's important to think about when you repurpose content. And as I said, I don't think it's that you are missing the opportunity to connect with a interpersonal learner if you only do podcasts. But I think if you repurpose, you just establish a deeper connection, because all of a sudden they're like, yes, I did listen to the podcast, but now that they're doing this live stream or whatever, that is more my cup of tea. That's what I would like. So so that's the 7 learning styles that I like to go through, Mitch. And yeah, makes
And
sense, I guess.
what's interesting, what we just experienced is there's a reason why I put you and I up on the left. For those of you watching the live video or recorded video and not listening to this on the podcast, on the screen, Amy and I are on the left side of the screen in thumbnails, live video, and in this main portion of the screen are photograph slides with words. And you're actually accommodating different learning approaches for people watching the video live and recorded, listening to the podcast in this presentation right now. You might not just want to put a slide up there because people may want to see the video part of this and watch our expressions. It's part of the learning experience. One of the things I always enjoyed about classes in college was showing up and watching the interaction between the students and the professors and the facial expressions. I just enjoyed that. I'm a people person, and there's always somebody that's going to throw you a left hook. You're not ready for it, and that's what keeps things interesting, right?
Yeah.
The other thing, Amy, is, do you want me to bring this up, or do we have some more slides? Do you want me to keep this up?
I've got some slides that I can share when we go through breaking down a Facebook Live, but I can stop sharing now.
Oh, I can. Okay. I was just going to say, the other thing is we want to take into consideration our audience.
Yes.
This Wednesday evening, our time here in California, I have Haben Girma on my show. Haben is the first deaf-blind graduate of Harvard Law School. She's the author of a best-selling book. She's a civil rights and disability advocate. And so the way Haben and I are putting on our live video show takes into consideration how can we communicate and how can our audience and her audience digest the information that we're going to be sharing. Now, we did this once before, 3 or 4 years ago, so she and I both know what we're going to do. But you do want to consider, how is your audience digesting the information? And then I guess, Amy, when repurposing that type of content, you also want to take into consideration, for example, American with Disabilities Act and rules and regulations, right? And all the above. I mean, you can dive deep into repurposing content.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, quite often people ask me about things like transcriptions, so when they have the videos and podcasts, and people will ask me about, should they do transcriptions and will it help them with SEO and, getting found by the search engines? But my answer to that always is actually no. Transcripts aren't really known to help you with SEO because they're not written in an SEO friendly way. They're not written to rank for anything, but they, from an accessibility perspective, they are good for people who are hard of hearing, or they are good for people who don't speak your language as their first language. And, there's so many ways that actually, no, it might not help you with the search engines, but it helps it become more accessible, to another level. And also just the kinds of people who in their brain, they listen to something, but they really want to go back and read back through it and make notes and things like that. So you're going from that listening learner to more the structured learner. Now I want to highlight things and bring some structure to this and things like that. So it's always thinking about, as you said, the accessibility and the different types of people, and trying to just bring it closer to more people, isn't it? Just trying to make it more accessible to as many people as possible.
And I think when you do, it's appreciated, and it also gives you the opportunity to reach out and connect with more people who you may not have had the opportunity to connect with. I have a question here. You mentioned earlier about taking video clips, taking our live video, and I know you're going to run through how to repurpose a Facebook Live, for example. But what product or services do you use to create those clips? See, there's some basic questions here that maybe we can answer.
Yeah. So, is it the question pertaining to turning longer videos into shorter videos, like video clips? Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's different options. There's using just a video editing software. So, for example, on Macs, you most likely have iMovie built into the Macs, or people may use things like Camtasia, Final Cut Pro, but video editing software where when you do a live stream like this, or you have a pre-recorded video, but you'll extract the video file. So using third-party software, you can download the MP4, the video file of the video that you've created. So using software like that, it's about uploading the video into the software and then, you know, editing out clips. So just creating the clips and discarding the content that you don't want, and then creating individual clips. So that's one way. When we do that, I don't want to get too techy, but when we do that, we use a program called Canva. So Canva is a graphic editing software. I think there's a free version, and then it's very low priced, and it's brilliant.
I love it. I love it.
The best thing, isn't it? So we like to create canvases that we put the video to sit on. And what I mean by that is, often, you know, when you see on social media, videos often sit in somewhat of a, you know, a canvas with a title at the top and captions at the bottom and progress bars and things like that. They look more like a made for social media video. And so we like to create that border around the video in something like Canva, and then we'll edit that into the video using the editing software. Now, if you don't want to use editing software, like I mentioned, iMovie, Camtasia, things like that, there are certain programs that they're quite, you know, restrictive in terms of they won't have exactly your color brand, and maybe you won't be able to add your logo and things like that, but there are still programs that still help you do things like that. There's one called Subtitles, I think I'm saying it right, with a Z, like Subtitles, and there's another called, it's not, because we don't use it, it's gone off the top of my head, but it's Splashio. There's one called Splashio. You pay a monthly fee, and from that monthly fee, you get so many little videos that you can create a week. I think like so many a month or something like that. So there's software, or just see if you can use video editing software, or you know, hire somebody who can just do that video editing for you and create like really great looking on a repetitive kind of canvas that looks on brand for you.
Perfect.
Always recommend add captions, whatever you do, social media, add captions to your videos.
No, sometimes it's just breaking it down to the basics for a lot of team members, lawyers who have front office team members that are going to be doing this. I will tell you guys, when we upload our video into iMovie, which is what Amy mentioned, which is free with our Macs, what we do is we then will download the audio only and use that to help create the podcast. Although StreamYard does allow you just to download the audio, but we find when we're able to look at the video and Amy and I talking while we're looking at the audio, it's actually easier to edit the audio and then download just the audio. At least it is for us. We also are using Lately, trylately.com. Have you tried that, Amy? Because it's pretty powerful. So what it is, it's an AI-based service, and I am a brand ambassador for the company, you guys, but it's because I like the product. So I'll take this recorded video, I'll upload it into Lately, and Lately will create and auto-generate clips of our conversation along with the text. And Gary Vee's using this on one of his Twitter feeds. And so what they say, it's like getting you to third base if you're a baseball player. It puts it together, and then you go in and it'll create, say, 50 to 125 different clips from this one interview. Then you go in, you clean up the language, or you have a team member clean up the language, add a link, add some hashtags, and then you schedule it as you deem appropriate, once a week, once a month, 4 times a year. And it goes out. It's pretty cool for taking and creating video clips. And I just wanted to put this out there. Most of what we're doing is in iMovie right now, right? Because it's just so darn easy. But why don't we use a real life example? Say we're doing a Facebook Live, and we're done with the live recording, and now we want to repurpose this Facebook Live. I know you're going to share a couple of your favorite approaches with the audience.
I'll jump on to my slides again, and I'll show you. Really quickly, I want to point out something, which is really quickly that before we get into how to repurpose a live video, I wanted to make the point that sometimes your live video can be repurpose content to begin with. And what I mean by that is when people say to me, what would the live be about? Or how do I prep for the live and things like that? So a podcast, a live stream could be expanding on a podcast episode. So you could be a podcaster, and then maybe every Friday you go live to talk about the topic of your podcast episode that week or something like that. So it's, you know, it's kind of repurposing. You put all the thought and effort into the initial piece, and now you're going live. Another option, you do blog posts, and then every week or whatever it may be, maybe you do live stream about blog posts. You could make your live streams answering questions from your clients. So the questions come in, and every week a live stream is in relation to that. Questions from social media, Twitter chats, Insta stories, polls, that kind of thing, or inviting, you know, guests onto your show. So sometimes people do a podcast and then they do a live stream with the same guest. So getting a little bit meta, but your live stream can even start from, you know, repurposed content, repurposed ideas, I guess, and messages. And then different ways to repurpose a live video. So, when we looked at the learning styles, when you do your live video, you're connecting very deeply with those verbal learners and also the social interpersonal people who turn up enjoying the live experience and the interaction. You can, we've talked about some of this, so extracting the videos and putting into other locations, putting your video onto YouTube and other places like that. We've talked about this as well, but putting your video into a blog as well. So when you have that video content, extracting the video and sharing it in like a vlog style content on your blog. Editing, so remove live elements and make it more interesting for a non-live audience is often something that we recommend. So often we really recommend having a way that you segment your live so that there's a clear section that you could repurpose where it doesn't involve maybe some live interaction, asking people to comment below and all that kind of thing. So it's stripping that out in the after of the live to make it more interesting for that non-live audience that missed the live experience.
Can you, I'm not sure I understand that. Okay. So where it says remove live elements to make it more interesting for your non-live audience. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I can give you an example. So for example, a client of ours, she used to do live streams where she had, it was fashion. It was like a kind of fashion, travel fashion type live streams. She'd have clothes and things like that. And we used to repurpose, like I say, 45-minute live stream into more like a 10 to 12 minute YouTube video. And what we used to take out was a lot of the just kind of live aspects. So waiting for people to join, you know, let's have a few more people join before we get started, cutting that out, maybe cutting out sections where it became a bit back and forward, you know, people asking questions and saying, not quite sure what you mean. Can you type a little bit more in here? Oh, you know, cutting all of that out. So really, it's not fair to say trim the fat because it wasn't fat to begin with, but you know what I mean, like really sharpening it up so that a YouTube person just sees bam, 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 bam. She'd deliver tip after tip after tip after tip, and a non-live stream person just saw the absolute gold. So that's something that we often do, is really trim down a live stream for a post-live video. Yeah. And a reason, and then here we have just your video having its little video babies. So as we said, it sounds like lately gives your video lots of little video babies.
I've never thought of it that way before.
So using various tools and slicing and dicing the videos and sharing in all the different platforms that you want to share them with. But that's all still video. So we've talked about video and different ways to share the video. So when we're looking at, okay, how do we move from video now? So extracting the audio. So Mitch, you just mentioned this before, and it's something I mentioned with Jay Bear and his Talk Triggers show. But when you have video, you have audio. So if you are interested in having a podcast and having that podcast audience, and it's appropriate and it's not too visually dependent and that kind of thing, then it's a really great idea to explore extracting audio from video and turning into podcast episode. And especially when I mentioned earlier the removal of some of the live elements from videos. So we would do this with our clients who are turning live streams to podcast episodes, just because we would be thinking about the audio experience, and definitely not wanting to hear comment below and things like that, because that's not relevant when you're listening to the podcast in the car and that kind of thing. So this is a really good thing to do, and I really do recommend it, because I think sometimes people are surprised how much their audience are crying out to listen to them in the car or on the dog walk, because they don't have enough time to watch the videos and that kind of thing. So that gets you connecting with those oral learners too. So you're expanding who you are connecting with through that type of content. Then we have create written content. People do still want to read. So I've got here from a live stream.
Amy?
Yeah.
Just real quick before I forget it, because at my age, if I don't say something, I'm going to forget about it. I think what's interesting is, like you said, there's so much noise during the live broadcast. People's mics don't work. Can you repeat the question? When you do create that audio for a podcast or for Amazon, Alexa, I don't want to turn her on, or she's in the corner, or Google Home, you can edit out those dead spots in the audio too. You can make your audio better too before you share it with the world. You don't have to share bad audio with the world, right? And so sometimes when I mess up with giving an introduction, or for whatever reason we have a dead spot, we'll splice and cut that out of the audio before we redistribute it. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted everyone to know, don't put so much pressure on yourself. There's so much you can do in the editing side of what we're talking about to make your guest look good, to make your content look better. So use these tools to come across in a better fashion.
Yeah, exactly. And we just always recommend that having a format to, say, a live stream, where you know the bits that you are going to turn into the podcast episode, and you just know the bits that you are going to edit out. So if you have a start where you interact with people, welcome them, back and forward, then you have a key section where you present to a topic, and you tell your live streamers, for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be presenting to a particular topic. So I'm not going to take questions for the next 10 minutes, but then at the end, I'll come back for questions. They know why you're not taking questions at that point in time. And then that's the goal that you can take to become the podcast episode, because you presented on the core topic. And then you can cut to, right, let's have some back and forward now. Let's chat. This is live. And I really recommend that, because if you go live, the whole point of that is to be live, isn't it? It's to interact with people and recognize that people are there, and make the most of that experience. So you don't want to diminish that because you're thinking, oh, it's going to become a podcast episode and it'll seem weird to my podcast listeners if I'm engaging with them. But don't do it constantly. If you segment it a bit, you have a really great bit that you can take out. So it's really good to think, if you are planning on doing that, how could I make it as easy as possible in the editing process? And if you don't, then just add an intro at the start that says, hey guys, welcome to podcast episode. This is actually audio from a live stream. So if you hear me saying certain things about comments, it's a live stream. That's why I'm saying it. And, then go into the main bit. So everything, like you said, Mitch, everything is editable, changeable, explainable. So it's more about just getting going with it, isn't it? And finding the rhythm with it. So yeah, that really works. Then written content. So, things like writing show notes, but you can go a little bit further, and you can also write long form blog posts about the topic that you discussed. If it's an interview, you can do a journalistic type write up of the interview, through to if it's, you presenting on a particular topic. But it's really great to have that written content with the videos that you create. And I just like to mention that, as well as thinking about putting them onto your website as an obvious place as a blog post, you can post them as a LinkedIn article. You could post them as a Medium article. Maybe there's a professional site or journal that you submit articles to be published there. So there's other options of the written content, as well as your own land, so to speak, as well. And you can do it all as well. Anything that goes on LinkedIn, you could also have on your website as well. So it's good to do that, and that will help you start to get found by people on search as well. more so than the video, although video is becoming a lot more searchable these days.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
so what, can I, one question and a comment?
Yes.
So my comment is, watch how Amy blogs. Look at Mike Alton's blog post, his long form content. Watch Nick Rishwain of experts.com, how he blogs. Amy, what they do is, obviously, in addition to great content, they're bringing in comments and examples from clients, from third parties, or including them as part of their content creation. And guess what happens, you guys, when somebody who's well thought of, maybe has a large audience of social, sees that they're quoted or the focal point of a blog post, they usually will share that out, assuming all else equal, to their audience. And it's a great way to kind of expand your audience, expand your perceived expertise, your top of mind awareness on social media when you create properly written blog posts. Chris Brogan wrote a chapter in my book about blogging for professionals, a right and wrong way to do it. Mike Alton did the same thing. So it's a matter of doing what Amy's talking about, and then letting loose on the reins a little bit, right? You've created the original content. Now hand this over to an organization or company like Amy, or to your front team in the front office, and let them start sharing this on social media for you in all the different ways that we talked about. But here's my question. It's, what about duplicate content? Do we need to be worried about being penalized by the Google algorithm when we share blog post on Medium, a LinkedIn article on our blog site? What are the pros and cons of what we need to know?
Yeah, so there isn't any such thing as a Google penalization. So you can't get penalized by Google, and it's absolutely fine for you to put an article on your blog and put that also on Medium or LinkedIn.
Okay.
What you do want to do, though, what you need to do is, if you are going to put it on your blog and you would like the blog post to be recognized as the original source of that content, then you want to make sure that you put it on there first. And you want to maybe allow a little bit of time for Google to rank that as the original source of that article. So, maybe allow, so it's different schools of thought. Some people say just allow a week or two. Some people say, oh no, allow about kind of 4 or 5 weeks before you would then post that on to Medium or LinkedIn or wherever it may be. But just allow a little bit of time to make sure that it gets registered as the original post. And then when you post that article in other places, it's just a really great idea to maybe add at the bottom, this article originally appeared on, and just provide the link to where it originally appeared on your website. That's absolutely fine. And I would say that's perfectly best practice for your written content. And you can always change the title up a little bit and change it a little bit if you want. But even if you didn't, it would be fine, and you wouldn't get in trouble with Google or penalized or blacklisted or anything like that.
All right, that's good. That's good to hear. Everyone, we're speaking with Amy Woods of Content X, 10X. She is a repurposing content expert, social media expert. Which her name was shared with me by Jay Baer, who I think most people respect as being one of the top marketers, on the planet. And that's why Amy's here today. I do have some questions that are coming in. I think it's on Periscope or YouTube. I'm not really sure, but we'll get to them. But I do want to say hi, Amy. You're over in England. Harold Epps is up the street. We're actually going to grab a Zoom quick lunch together when we're done with this show in a couple of hours. And he's a long-term friend of mine. So Harold, it's good to see you. And I love the hug that you're giving to your dog. That is worth so much when it comes to social currency, isn't it, Amy? It's funny how the little things will stick in your mind, like the Basset Hound that you shared earlier in the show. Now, the fun, positive things will stick in our mind, but so will the mistakes, okay? When we do something wrong on social media, especially when it comes to repurposing content, it can sting for a while. And Amy, maybe share with us 4 or 5 of the most common mistakes that you see people make when it comes to repurposing content on social media.
Yeah, sure. So, first thing I would say is having kind of like a set and forget when you repurpose content onto social media. So this is when you don't follow the content that you create. And what I mean by that is
Guilty.
yeah, well,
Guilty. Just being
it's
honest.
yeah, and I think it's easily done, but I think it's about engagement, isn't it? So this is more about, I guess, social media than other things that we've talked about, turning into podcasts and blog posts and things like that. But on social media, if you know, if you have a strategy where every blog post is going to become 10 tweets, but then you never go on Twitter, so you just put it into Buffer or Hootsuite or SmarterQ or Meet Edgar, whatever, and then you never go there. So you don't know if anyone's retweeting or commenting or anything, because you don't use Twitter. You just simply use it to send over a few tweets from a blog post or something. Things like that, I think, you know, it's a shame, because you want to be using the platform for what it's for and not just setting and forgetting. So that's one thing. Follow your content. So that is what I would say. You should turn up and you should engage with people and make the time to have those engagements. Other mistakes. So not respecting the platform. So this is really about, it's not just a one size fits all approach, and the Instagram post may not be the LinkedIn post, and the LinkedIn post may not be the TikTok post that you're planning on doing, and so on. So it's really about consider why people are there, and make sure, coming back to when we were talking about, it's all a form of communication and just getting your message across in the most appropriate way for that platform. So not so much copy and paste, but more around, why are people on Twitter? Why are people on Instagram? Why are people on Facebook? Why are people on LinkedIn? And adjusting the message to just consider the platform and be respectful of why people are there, and have fun with it too. The conversation you have on Twitter might not be, you know, the same conversation that you have on LinkedIn. So yeah, there's that. And then I guess lastly, like, no consistency. So it's so important from a few different perspectives. So social media, the algorithms love consistency and they love engagement. So they are going to give you some love and help you get found by more people if they see that you are engaging and see that you are consistent. But also humans love consistency too. You know, like humans love it. If we stop and talk about bots and just say, right, humans love consistency. Actually, they like to see similar things coming out at a similar time. You like to see you be consistent with your message and who you are and what you stand for and what you're telling people you do, and consistent with showing up in different places. And humans love to be engaged with too, don't they? So it's not just about the bots here. So yeah, I'd say they are the key things. You've got to respect the platform, don't set and forget, and try and be consistent. And it's not about trying to do everything. It's about just being consistent with the things that you see work and you see people like and engage with.
I love that. I love that. What about using the power of repurposing content with also tapping into the power of all of the different time zones around the world? Right now we're live 10 o'clock Pacific Coast, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure what time it is in Manchester, but there are people who are watching this live from all over the world, the recorded version. Repurposing allows us to accommodate those potential viewers, right?
Yeah, exactly. It comes back to the accessibility again, doesn't it? And it's, you know, it is just making it more accessible for all sorts of different reasons. And yeah, time zone's a huge thing, and it is a tricky one, especially, you know, with a live stream in particular. You've just got to know where the majority of what, you can't please everybody, can you? But then that's the beauty of then repurposing and getting the gold from what people did miss in Australia while they were asleep, that they can still see more from the content that you repurpose. And I think, again, that's why it comes down to, they might not want to watch the whole live stream. That might be too much of an ask, but asking them to watch the shorter YouTube highlight video that's the 6 minutes of the gold from the live stream or whatever, that's when you start kind of really being strategic with your repurposing and really audience centric, I guess, with what you're trying to achieve.
Amy, this has been fantastic. What you've shown us is you've given us some new ideas to set out more welcome mats into our practices, into our businesses, into our lives. And I think just because I may enjoy Twitter, my audience might be over on Instagram and LinkedIn. And so, like you said, understanding and using the power of repurposing to tap and to lay out those welcome mats on other platforms and to start and build better relationships and more referral sources. It's a business asset that is oftentimes underutilized. But as you said at the beginning of the show, because of the amount of time that you're putting into it, maybe it's a business asset more of us need to spend more time on and do the right way. And I don't know about you, but I have a little bit more time right now to do this kind of stuff than I did 6 months ago. So this is a great opportunity for everyone to be proactive and add repurposing and the recreation of existing content into your marketing and branding needs. Amy, if anyone's jumping in late, if they want to connect out, with you, if they want to get your company involved with their repurposing efforts, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
It really is just either website, content10x.com, or you can find me pretty much on every social platform as well. And I'm at content10x on all the social platforms. Otherwise, amy@content10x.com, email as well. So that would be the one, amy@content10x.com.
What's our time difference right now?
Our time difference is, so you are 8 hours.
8
You're
hours?
Pacific, right? So it's 5 to 7 p.m. here in the UK. Yeah. So
okay. Everyone keep that in mind. We don't want anyone waking you up at 3 a.m. Okay. Unless it's a big job and a big case, right?
Oh yeah. Well, we're always on the case, content marketing superheroes at Content 10X. That's what we try to say.
You are fantastic. I'm glad that our paths have crossed, and I really appreciate, on behalf of everyone watching the show, both live and recorded, I really appreciate you being on, Amy, sharing your wisdom, sharing your expertise, sharing all the different ways that we can repurpose content to build our brand in an exponential way that not only takes care of our immediate community here locally, but also nationally and globally. That's what social is all about. And that's what all those welcome mats that Amy has been showing us how to do, that's where they come in and they help you. But even more important, they help your customers and your clients get answers and solutions. Amy, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining us. This will be available, you guys, recorded and in podcast version, probably in a few days. But between now and then, you guys enjoy the journey, do the best you can with what you've got, and work each day to make it a masterpiece. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.